Alright, we are back, and today we're gonna have to run through this real quick. I got a super simple exhibit for the Common Ostrich, but I have a lot of information. So, let's get right into it. So, the Common Ostrich, also known as the Struthio camellus in Latin, meaning ostrich. Struthio just means ostrich in Latin. And in Greek, it also means ostrich. However, it comes from the contemporary Greek term for the ostrich, which is actually a combination of camel and sparrow. Apparently to the Greeks, ostriches were camel sparrows. Sure, I mean, it's a bird, close enough. There are four main subspecies of common ostrich. Camellus, of the previously discussed Sahel that we talked about in the African spurred tortoise video. There's also the Molybdophanes, or the Somali ostrich, which is found in the African Horn. Surprise, surprise. The Masacus, or the Maasai ostrich of the African plateau, which is over there in Kenya, in that greater area. And Australis ostrich, or the southern ostrich of the Kalahari Desert. Now, as we all know, the ostrich is the second fastest land animal on Earth, obviously the fastest biped because of such, able to run anywhere from 34 miles per hour and in short bursts up to 60 miles an hour. It is also the heaviest bird, weighing 131 to 290 pounds, which all depends on their subspecies and sex. They are sexually dimorphic. The males are more black in their feather coloring, and the females are a grayish brown. They stand roughly 9 feet tall and usually live in pairs. But during breeding season or through droughts, they are known to group up, anywhere from 5 to 100 species. They'll also travel with herds of zebra, gazelle, and other grazers when it's time for migration. Now, usually, they would run from danger whenever they have to deal with a predator. However, they can kick up to 500 pounds of force with extremely sharp claws. If it were to hit something like a person's abdomen, it would most likely immediately disembowel them, and probably break a decent amount of ribs. Now, the males are known as cocks, just like with chickens, as with the females being hens. Very common in the avian community for that to be the case. Now, the ostrich egg, interesting fact, is actually the largest single cell, that being the egg cell, not the entirety of the egg. Yeah, I know, right? I am absolutely flying through this. Speaking of flying, since they're flightless birds, it is no surprise that they are related to emus, cassowaries, and other flightless birds of that sort. Not penguins, however, they evolved separately. And speaking of evolution, let's get to their history, shall we? So, the ratites, which, again, ostriches, emus, cassowaries, were thought to have formed before the separation of Gondwana. For those who do not know, Gondwana is one of the many supercontinents throughout world history, which at the time consisted of South America, Africa, India, Australia, and other small fragmented parts, which explains why those are the only locations we can find to this day that have ratites, excluding India. Ostriches in Africa, emus and cassowaries in Australia, the rhea in South America, and in New Zealand, the kiwi. Yes, that tiny little bird is related. Now, Gondwana broke up roughly 200 to 170 million years ago. So, we aren't entirely sure where the ostrich itself originally came from. The earliest fossils we found are actually in the Asian steppe, places like Kazakhstan, Mongolia, and the other stands. Now, it is interesting to note that we had also found fossils in China, Hungary, Greece, Crimea, and the nation of Georgia, which gives the idea that they most likely, and this is just my theory, the ostrich itself evolved either in Asia after India connected with the rest of Eurasia, or they evolved in India prior to such. As with all ancient species, there was a much larger version of this animal known as Pachystrothius, which was as tall as 11.5 feet and weighed almost 1,000 pounds. Many of the fossils that we found that I spoke of previously are actually of Pachystrothius and not the common ostrich. The common ostrich most likely did evolve in Africa or maybe even the Arabian Peninsula, seeing how there was an extinct species that once lived in the area. Interestingly enough, though, can we just stop for a moment and discuss the idea of a bird that is over twice the height of the average human being and weighing half a ton? That is horrifying and awesome at the same time. Could you imagine? That's it's even bigger than a chocobo would be. I was going to make a chocobo reference from Final Fantasy, but it's even bigger than one of those. Throughout human history, the ostrich has had a very, very interesting bit of influence. It was influential in Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Kingdom of Kush, and pretty much all throughout Africa and Europe. There have been statues for a millennia depicting these animals, one of which, speaking of riding giant birds, was of Erisone II of Egypt riding an ostrich. That is an amazing depiction of a king. We have seen people ride big cats, bears, horses, blah, blah, blah. What kind of Chad rides an ostrich? That is the best king I've ever heard of. Anyway, in other cultural effects, eggshells had actually been used as canteens all throughout the Kalahari by native people. And possibly this has been a practice for as long as 60,000 years based on findings from the Diepkloof rock shelter. Goddamn Dutch. And are actually very common in Venetios during the Roman era, which was essentially when the Romans decided that instead of throwing people into the arenas, we're going to throw a bunch of animals, and either they're going to fight each other, or we're going to have people fight the animal. As a matter of fact, the Roman Emperor Commodus had invented an arrow that specializes in decapitating ostriches. It was a crescent shape at the end, and, I think you can put the pieces together. Apparently they enjoyed watching it, because just like the old adage of a chicken with its head cut off, ostriches seem to do the same. God, how macabre. Anyway, now I'm sure you're curious, ever since I talked about the statue depiction and the giant version of, since we're talking about riding birds so much apparently in this video, can you ride an ostrich? That answer is yes, absolutely, it is possible. Now, they have attempted to ride them like horses, which is very, very difficult, seeing how, turns out, balance is kind of an issue. Consider it this way. Just like how a motorcycle, you require more balance and it's kind of really hard to do compared to driving a car, I feel like that's the difference between a horse and an ostrich. But not only could you ride it with a saddle, they've attached them to chariots. Because of course they did. But you may be thinking, why would you want a chariot run by ostriches? That's very simple. The historical event of ostrich racing, of course. Why else? And not only is it historic and been done all throughout human history, you can still see it today. All throughout places in Africa, you can watch chariot races. But let's say you're an American, just like me, red-blooded, God-fearing American. You can see them here too. I've actually got a list of locations, just to give you an idea of how beautiful this nation is. Some of the locations I was able to find where they have not only an annual festival in honor of the ostrich, like in places like Chandler, Arizona, but there's also a few places that just have them for fun, I guess, because, why wouldn't you? Also found in Virginia City, Nevada, Canterbury Park in Minnesota, Prairie Meadows, Iowa, Ellis Park, Kentucky, and the Fairgrounds of New Orleans, Louisiana have all laid host to ostrich racing. Now, this is one of those lovely episodes where I'm able to spout on and on and on about honestly kind of useless information, but very funny information about the animal, solely for the fact that when it comes to conservation, ostriches are least concerned. And while, yes, their population has dropped dramatically in the past 200 years, they're pretty adaptable to any sort of open area. So deforestation somewhat benefits them. Desertification, it's a bit different. While they can survive in very arid areas, they really do not spend time in the Kalahari or the Sahara. That being said, there's one little bit of information I would like to add. One that I've discussed a few times on this series. And that is how delicious ostrich meat is. I've never had it personally, but from what I can tell, it is phenomenal. So, usually, it is depicted as being somewhat in between poultry and red meat. And kind of because of such is used a lot in religious events where you can't have red meat. Now, it is also actually a very healthy form of meat because it is very low in fat and cholesterol and is high in all sorts of vitamins like protein and iron. Along with all that, I was curious, how many omelets can you make with a single ostrich egg? So I ran the math. Seeing how a chicken egg is roughly 2 ounces on average, and you usually need about 2 per omelet, it would go to show that you need 4 ounces of egg to make an omelet. Very simple math. I'm pretty sure any child could do it. Now, an ostrich egg weighs 48 ounces. That means for 1 ostrich egg, you can have 12 whole-ass omelets. You can feed a dozen men breakfast with 1 ostrich egg. Someone get the Navy on board because we need these watery eggs maximized, alright? Quit using chicken eggs, get some ostrich eggs, and feed our troops. With that being said, thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. If there's anything else you would like to know or see about the next animal, the common warthog, please let me know, and I will make sure to add it into my research day. And one little last bit of news coming up. On New Year's Eve into New Year's Day, I will be doing a live stream to donate money for my local zoo. You don't have to donate, you can just come, check it out. It's going to be 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Eastern Time. Remember, it's going to be the last day of December 31st into January 1st. Hopefully, you're in that time frame where I will be with you for New Year's if you'd like to see. But, until next time, thank you for watching. Go outside, touch grass, drink water, hug your loved ones, and bye-bye.